PF19 works exactly like the PF5, except for it has a larger capacity. We've got 2 tanks in the machine. The machine's offered with 2 7-gallon tanks. We also offer the machine with a 7-gallon and a 4-gallon tank. The machine comes equipped with a light duty and a heavy duty fittings kit. What we can do with that, we can do any vehicle from a Honda to your large, like city dump trucks or like a trash truck. One of the major differences in the machine is we've got a heavy duty and light duty setting here. If you're using the light duty fittings kit, you put it in light duty. If you're using the heavy duty fittings kit, you put it in heavy duty. The reason that is, in light duty it has a 15-pound bypass. Basically, when the service is done, it'll go into a bypass mode. In light duty it's 15 pounds, and heavy duty it's 30 pounds. If we're hooked up to a large vehicle, say like an Allison transmission in a city dump truck, it's producing 50 pounds of pressure or 60 pounds of pressure, and we got 4 to 5 gallons per minute flow, there's a chance that it could override a 15-pound bypass, and what that would do is just put our new fluid right back into the bottom of our tank. That would lose our efficiency. So we put a heavy duty and light duty cycle in there to eliminate that. Some of the other features of the machine, once again, it does have a flow meter on there. That way you can tell what the condition of the transmission is. It's got a rectifier block in it. It flows the right direction every time. We can manually fill the machine. We can pressure fill the machine. We've got the source over here on the side, like when you're done doing the service, you check the fluid level. We can remove some fluid off the transmission if we need to, if we're in an overfill situation. Other than that, the machine works exactly like the PF5. This machine does have the option where we can use one tank or the other. So if say you get to a vehicle and you only want to use 7 gallons, 28 quarts, you don't want to use the full 14 gallons, then we can shut one tank off or the other. We've got a ball valve right here on top of both tanks to turn off. The one thing you want to know about this machine is you've got to have the machine full of fluid to do the service. Both tanks got to be completely full. You cannot use one tank and have the other tank empty. It will not work. As you can tell, our ball valves are on the top side of the tank, so the avenues to the bottom side of the tank is still open. So what will happen when you start the vehicle, if you've only got one tank full, you got the other tank empty, even if you got the ball valve turned off, what will happen is that air, the fluid's going to go into that tank and compress the air that's in there to equal whatever fluid pressure we've got. That's fine until the service is complete. When you turn your pressure source off, when you turn the engine off, basically what happens is that air expands, pushing the fluid back out the dipstick tube. So you got to have the fluid, you got to have the machine full of something at all times. Now you can, when you do the initial fill, after you initially fill the machine, you can go do a service and say you use the 14 gallons the first time. You can use one tank, you can leave it full of used fluid, turn it off, and then just work out of the other tank for the rest of the life of the machine if you want. That's your choice. So what I'm saying is you've got to have the machine full of fluid. It can be new or used fluid, it doesn't matter, but you've got to have them both full to be able to use the machine. To do a service with the PF19, first we've got to set the machine up. This is a brand new machine, so what we're going to do, we're going to pressure fill this machine. We've got 2 choices. We can manually fill or pressure fill. But since the machine's brand new, we're not 100% sure where the bladders are in the tank. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to blow the bladders to the top of the tank. We're going to know the bladders are to the top of the tank because our indicators will come up. Okay, we've got an open-ended hose. We're going to take our recharge adapter, put it on a purge port, put the machine in purge. Then we're going to make sure both of our ball valves on top of the tanks are open. So we're wanting to blow both bladders up. We're going to put air to it. When we put air to it, we want to watch our use gauge running around 20 to 40 pounds. As you can see, both of our indicators already came up. You can hear our bypass valve. That's what's making noise right now. We know both bladders are at the top of the tank. Next thing, what we want to do if we were going to manually fill this tool, what we do is we take our recharge adapter, bring it to our recharge port, put our machine in recharge, we blow the bladders back down, we'd open our valves here and manually fill. We'd be filling fluid in here until we had fluid come out our side vent here. So what we're going to do, we're going to pressure fill. So since we're going to pressure fill, we've got a pressurized ATF source here. We're going to go to our recharge adapter. We're going to have air to our pump. Got our machine in recharge. I'm going to go ahead and fill the machine. We still got to have an open-ended adapter here, because what we're doing, as we can see, our indicators are going down. And what that's doing is pumping new fluid on top of the bladders, pushing the bladders down. As the bladders go down, that air has got to have some place to go. That's why we got to have an open-ended adapter on there. We know the machine's full. The used gauge is going to stay at 0. The new gauge is going to come out to 50, and it's just going to stop. You can tell the service is complete. The new gauge is going to raise to 50 and stop. Used gauge is going to stay at 0. I'm going to turn air pressure off our pump. I'm going to go to pressure release. Make sure both gauges go to 0. Disconnect the pump. We're ready to do the service. Now that we've got the machine set up, we want to hook it up to the vehicle. We want to identify a spot in between the transmission and the transmission cooler to get into the system. As you can see, we've got transmission lines coming up to the bottom of the cooler and the top of the cooler. We're going to go into the top of the cooler. We've already put our quick clean in the transmission. We've ran the transmission. We've checked the fluid, make sure the fluid level's fine. And we're going to hook up our machine. We're going to identify the appropriate adapters out of our machine. We've got our heavy duty fittings, heavy duty jumper hoses. I'm going to go ahead and put this fitting on there before I screw it onto the radiator. Go ahead and put our other jumper hose on our other fitting. These are JIC O-ring face fittings. So they need to be tight, but they don't have to be super tight. Once we got our adapters on both sides of the transmission cooler and the transmission line, I'm going to go ahead and hook our machine up. Doesn't matter which fitting goes where. Doesn't matter which service hose goes on which side. One thing I want to point out is once you get the fitting on there, we've got a lock. Go ahead and lock the fitting. That way, if the door comes down or something happens during the service, our service hose can't be knocked off our adapter. Once we got it hooked up, we want to check over the machine. We've got the heavy-duty fittings kit on there, so we're doing a heavy-duty truck. So we want to have our setting in heavy-duty. This is what we talked about earlier. We've got 2 tanks in this system, and we filled both tanks. That's the number one thing we want to emphasize when we're using the PF19 or the PF20, the big dogs. We've got to have both tanks completely full. The system will not work if you have one tank empty and one tank full. You got to have them both full. And the reason is we can shut one tank off or the other, but our ball valves are on the top of the tank. So if we had one tank empty and one full, even if we shut off the ball valve, the avenue to the bottom of the tanks is still there. These tanks work in parallel. They're not in series. So when we start the vehicle, we got one full and one empty. The used fluid is going to go to both tanks, bottom of both tanks. And the tank that's empty, the used fluid is going to start pumping into this tank. And what happens is, it'll say we got 60 pounds of pressure coming from this vehicle. It's going to pump that fluid in there until it compresses the air to 60 pounds, okay? Once it gets to 60 pounds, it'll neutralize. The service will go fine until you shut the vehicle off. You shut the vehicle off, that's your pressure source on the machine. That's your pressure source that's keeping the air compressed. As soon as you turn it off, that air will expand, pushing that fluid that's in the bottom of the tank back to the vehicle and out the dipstick. So you got to have both tanks full of something at all times. So what we're going to do, this vehicle, we're going to do the service with one tank. So we're going to shut one off. Going to shut one tank off and leave the other one on. So when we're doing the service, after we get done, when we see they're splitting the gauges or see the indicator come up, if we're not happy with the color of the fluid that's going through our machine, what's still in the vehicle, we can go down there and just turn the other tank on and finish the service using the other tank. So at this point, what we want to do, we got the machine in bypass, we're going to go ahead and start the vehicle. We got the vehicle started. We can see we got flow and we got good pressures. The fluid in this vehicle doesn't look too bad. We're going to go ahead and do the service anyway. Once we checked our fittings, make sure we don't have any leaks, we got flow, we got pressure, we're going to go ahead and go to process. What's happening now is the used fluid is being pumped into the tank that we have on, ladder's being pushed up, the new fluid's going back to the vehicle. We'll know the service is complete because we'll see a split in our gauges. Since we got it on heavy duty, that's a 30-pound bypass, we're going to see about a 30-pound split in our gauges. If we're still not sure whether the service is done, we can always check the indicator on top of our tank. Let's see, we got about 4 gallons per minute flow. We're using 7 gallons, so it's going to take roughly 1.5 to 2 minutes to do the service. Our indicator's coming up. Once the indicator comes up, there's a split in our gauges. The service is complete. Like I said, if we weren't happy with the color, if this color was still black, we needed to flush more fluid through that transmission, we just reach down, turn that tank on, and go ahead and continue with the service, no problem. But everything looks good, so I'm going to put the machine back in bypass, and I'm going to check my fluid level. Remember, when you're checking the fluid level, we're still going to be putting a quart of conditioner in there, so we've got a little leeway here. Looks good. So we're going to shut the vehicle off and disconnect. Next, we want to go to pressure release. Make sure both gauges are at 0. Once they're at 0, we're going to disconnect. Next, we're going to take our fittings, our adapters, off the vehicle. We're going to reconnect the lines on the vehicle. We're going to start the truck. We're going to start the truck, make sure that we don't have any leaks. We're going to check our fluid one more time, and we're going to add our conditioner. If we don't have any leaks, we're reconnected the transmission lines. Putting the fluid level one more time. Looks good. Next, I'm going to add my conditioner. After we put our conditioner in there, the service is complete. If you remember, our machine, we used one tank to do the service. That means one tank is still full of new fluid. We've got two options here. We can take the machine back and we can drain the used fluid out of this tank and fill it back up. Or two, we could go to another vehicle and do a service, since we still got 7 gallons of fluid here. What we want to do, if we want to do that, we're going to have to, since we closed that tank, we're going to have to open it, and we're going to have to close the tank that's full of used fluid. Now we can go to another vehicle and do a service. That all depends. I mean, if we got a vehicle that has a capacity more than 7 gallons, then we're going to have to go fill the machine to go do that vehicle. Now, if we've got a, we did a dump truck. We just done a dump truck service, so we could go do a service on a light duty pickup or a small car without any problems with that 7 gallons.